This video contains harsh language, specifically English. Warning: the following video contains opinions, and they could even be contrary to yours. Please remember that even in the heat of the moment, it's about opinion. If you watch the whole video and you still don't agree with me, well, feel free to sound off in the comments. Just don't be a dick about it. Opinionated mates. Nintendo's official stance on emulators and ROMs is that it's all illegal, and there is no room for discussion. This will not be discussed. There is no discussion to be had. Well, Nintendo, yes there is. Now, Nintendo has always been very strict about its copyrights, it's always been very strict about its intellectual properties. 101 fan games get shut down, and what are we left with? Upset fans, annoyed fans who spent years of their lives developing things, which are basically just big love letters to the games that they've known and loved and grown up with their entire life. Just these love letters, these passionate fan projects shot down by Nintendo. They're especially violent when it comes to their personal content, the things that they own, their intellectual property. But what Nintendo has done, and I've got a link to a Eurogamer article and video, and a link to a Game Developers Conference speech, which is also relevant to this issue. Basically, what Nintendo have done, and people are saying, oh, they might not have done, it just suggests it. No, it doesn't suggest it. This happened. Nintendo sold you a Super Mario Bros. ROM that you can download from any ROM site, whether it be my personal favorite, Emulation, or from any other ROM site on the internet. If you can obtain a Super Mario Bros. ROM, chances are the ROM you downloaded is the one that Nintendo is selling you on the Wii Virtual Console. Yes, it's true, because hackers have pulled apart the Nintendo Wii Super Mario Bros. Channel and ripped out a ROM file which, when viewed in hexadecimal format, you fucking guessed it, contains what is called an iNes header. It was a line of code specifically designed by the creator of an NES emulator to allow ROM files to be played on emulators. Because Nintendo cartridges have more than one chip, and the data is spread across separate chips. And it's very hard for an emulator to know what's on each chip. So this format was made that allows a raw dump of the data that's on all chips, and this little line, this little iNes header tells it what kind of ROM it is, what kind of chips it's on, and it tells it where this split in the data happens, right? So this is a line of text that all ROMs dumped for use in NES emulators, specifically iNes, right? This line of text is an artifact that appears in every ROM that's dumped by hackers, by game archivists, for use for playing on PC, on an emulator, or on Android on an emulator, or any system that you've got an NES emulator on. I've got a very good disc for the Dreamcast that has every single NES game ever released on it, including California Raisins. Every single NES game ever released and unreleased on it. All those ROMs contain what's known as an iNes header, and that indicates that it's an NES ROM. Okay, so what? It's an iNes header, and Nintendo is giving you a ROM to play. You know, maybe they decided they were going to rip it in a well-accepted, well-understood ROM format, so it'd be easy to code and emulate. So what's the big deal? Well, Nintendo games and chips, they're not all the same. You don't release a cartridge and every single cartridge release of the game has exactly the same data on it. It doesn't work that way. The way the data is stored is very different, minutely different, depending on each chip. When you take this Mario Bros. ROM and you take all the data that makes up the ROM and you compare it to the data of another Super Mario Bros. 1 ROM downloaded from the internet, the entire content of the ROM file is the same. Absolutely the fucking same. All the data is 1:1 exact. So, Nintendo didn't rip their own copy of the game. It's simple, because if they rip their own copy of the game, there would be minute differences in the bytes of the ROM. There would be minute differences that would give away that it's their own rip. But those differences aren't there. All the data is exact to another Mario Brothers ROM. That begs the question. Nintendo, what was your stance on piracy again? Oh yeah, that it's not up for debate? And that all piracy is evil? That all emulation is evil and software piracy? Let's have a look at your corporate page again. What is it that you say? Alright, okay. Illegally copied Nintendo software represents the greatest threat to date to the intellectual property rights of video game developers. Yet you've taken an existing threat to your intellectual property rights and then sold it as your own product? You sold an unauthorized copy of your game as an authorized Nintendo download. Now that strikes me as odd. Come on. And as is the case with any business or industry, when its products become available for free, the revenue stream supporting that industry is threatened. Now I understand where you're coming from, Nintendo. You're saying that when your products become available for free, there's more chance that people will download ROMs of your games than will actually download commercially acceptable copies of your game. But may I remind you that one such commercially unacceptable copy of your game is now being sold as a commercially acceptable copy of your game. No, sorry, I don't follow. How come Nintendo does not take steps towards legitimizing Nintendo emulators? Emulators developed to play illegally copied Nintendo software promote piracy. That's like asking why Nintendo doesn't legitimize piracy. It doesn't make any business sense. It's that simple and not open to debate. But it is open to debate, because you have just sold countless digital copies of an unofficial, unauthorized, pirated ROM and claimed it as your own. Sega last year made a very strange move with the Sega Mega Drive hub on Steam. What they did was they allowed people to upload ROM hacks to Steam and play them on the Sega Mega Drive hub. They recently enabled Mega Drive ROMs to be played on the Sega Mega Drive hub on Steam. You can upload ROM hacks and play them on an official Sega product. At least Sega is trying to do something to patch things up between software pirates and genuine software consumers, because there is no 1 and 0 here. There is no black and white, yes or no, right or wrong. You'll find that people who consider themselves like serious gamers who love playing video games, right? They'll go out and they'll buy the latest video games. They'll buy the Uncharted 4s. They'll buy the Super Mario Makers. They'll buy the Quantum Leaps and the Dead Rising 4s. But they'll also sit down with a beer and play some classic Nintendo on their PC. They'll play some PlayStation games on an emulator. They'll stream Dora the Explorer and Noddy and the Magical Book on their YouTube channel. These people who enjoy gaming so much that they appreciate like the importance and the value of archiving and saving things for future generations to enjoy, preserving them for however long it is before the nuclear bomb is dropped and all of human life is wiped out. At least up until that point, we can all sit back and enjoy a brewski and play a Sega game on our PC and play a multiplayer Sega hack on our official Sega product on Steam. That is where Nintendo is not grasping the concept of software piracy and ROMs and emulation. I have shelves full of video games. Like, there's so much here. I'm just gonna start reading titles off, and you're gonna think I'm just making these all up. Celebrity Deathmatch, Dora Saves the Snow Princess, Casper Spirit Dimensions, The Cat in the Hat, Katamari Damacy, Crackdown 2, Dead to Rights Retribution, Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit, Party Carnival for the Nintendo DS, System Shock 2 for the PC, and the list goes on. I have so many games here: PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, Wii. I play video games. I play video games. I play video games in physical form. I play video games in digital form. I play video games. I know the value of owning something physical. So, just a random game, The Club. I know the importance of owning something physical. I know the importance of owning something digital. I know that digital content is sometimes more convenient, easier. And that's what's important. Nintendo think that piracy is not up for debate, but that puts Nintendo in a tough place. I defend the Nintendo Switch big time. I do. I defend the Nintendo Switch. I tell people that I like it so they can fuck off, right? That's what I do. That's my thing. That's my catchphrase now with the Nintendo Switch. However, you've got to have a look at what Nintendo is doing recently in regards to free games on their online service. They're offering one free NES or Super Nintendo game for a month. The way that is worded implies that that game is taken away. Yet right now, you can go onto your favorite emulation site, Emu Russia. You can go onto your favorite emulation site and download the entirety of the Nintendo back catalog and play it at any time. Which one is more convenient? There are some games that you can't play unless you download them. It's simply impossible. You can't go to your retro game collector and say, hey, give me a copy of Tokyo Shirai Soulbrain. Good fucking luck, Little Samson. There will be games that are impossible to find. There will be games that will cost so much money because they're so fucking rare. So Nintendo says to you, yeah, we're fine with you playing Hyperia on your Super Famicom console, but you've got to buy the game for £45 car only. I don't think so. There is a certain point where convenience wins over, and Nintendo has to understand this. That it's all about convenience. And Nintendo can't say ROMs and emulation isn't up for debate when they themselves sold you an unauthorized copy of their own game, ripped by a hacker probably somewhere in Russia or China. They sold you a copy of their own game, which has been countlessly downloaded millions of times since the dawn of dial-up internet. They've sold you this Mario ROM that you already have in your ROMs folder. They've sold you that ROM as an official game, and then they tell you that piracy is not up for debate. I think they just made piracy up for fucking debate. Don't you? It's no different than when iNes claimed they fixed glitches in Final Fantasy VII on the PC, only to steal a fan's existing patch and pass it off as their own, and even direct link to the original servers. But, you know, this is scummy. But it also shows that Nintendo is out of sync with the times. Emulation and software piracy is just going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and if Nintendo does not address it, it's going to come around and nip them in the ass, right? Nintendo have been dealing with piracy since the early days. They've had to deal with the fucking Dendy in Russia, alright? They know what piracy is like, and yet they continue to take this staunch approach, which is hurting them. It's hurting them, because at the end of the day, what's convenient will win over. Windows key, NES-topia, control open, boom, Super Mario Brothers. Which is more convenient? Nintendo needs to address this properly at some point, but they never will. Nintendo's official response to the claims that they sold you an existing Super Mario Bros. ROM is quite simply that they did not sell you a ROM that was downloaded from the internet, but all the evidence suggests, nay, proves otherwise. Get with the fucking times or get wrecked.